Hello, everybody, and welcome to CELPIP Writing Pro Target 9 Plus. This is Brandy speaking, and I'll be your presenter today. So as you are getting settled in, a quick reminder that all of the microphones on Zoom have been muted, but we are going to use the Zoom chat box to communicate. So if you have any questions at all about CELPIP today, or if you'd like to answer the many questions I'll be asking you during the session as we practice, you can use the Zoom chat there to place your comments. And I see already some people are saying hello and welcoming each other to the session. So thank you so much for doing that. It's great to start off on such a positive note. Now, within the next 24 hours, we are going to email you with 3 different links so that you can continue to study at home on your own time. Now, the first link will take you to a survey, and that part's completely optional. If you want to provide feedback, of course, you're more than welcome to. The second link is going to contain a study pack of materials that are going to summarize the main writing strategies that we're discussing today. We're also going to be looking at some sample responses by real CELPIP test takers. So you will receive the transcripts and the responses throughout within the study pack. Last but not least, there is going to be a link that will take you to a previously recorded version of the Target 9 Writing Pro session. So if you can't stay for the entire 2 hours today, that's fine. You can click on the link once you get this email, and it will open up a recorded version so you can catch up on whatever you might have missed. Now, I'll quickly introduce myself, and then I'll ask you a few questions about yourselves as well. So again, I'm Brandy. I'm an online instructor for the CELPIP test. I've been helping people prepare for CELPIP for just over 5 years now, and I've been teaching for 25 years, all said and done. I currently live in Vancouver in British Columbia. Now, I'm curious for all of you, maybe what your purpose is for taking the CELPIP test. You're clearly here to learn specifically about writing, but what brings you to CELPIP? Are you applying for your PR status? Are you applying for citizenship? Perhaps your postgraduate work permit? So please let me know in the Zoom chat really quickly, and we can see what the goal is for everybody. And partly the reason I ask is because, as you know, your own goal is going to dictate the score that you're chasing on the CELPIP test. So as I look into the Zoom chat, it looks like you're pretty evenly split between PR application for immigration purposes. So I would assume then that that group is pursuing a score of at least a level 9. So you're in the right place. This webinar is designed to target level 9 and higher. If you are applying for your postgraduate work permit, you would need perhaps a level 5 or a 7, depending on whether you've recently graduated from college or university. So again, this webinar is going to target higher level skills today, but regardless of the score that you're looking for on this test, you definitely will walk away today with some writing skills that will help you in general terms too with your own writing and day-to-day. All right. I'm going to let you know what we're doing today. Here's our plan. We've got about 2 hours, and I'm going to very quickly introduce what the writing test looks like online. This is a computerized test, so it's important for us to know where we'll find information to help us answer the questions successfully. We will also talk about how the test is scored, so you know which skills you'll want to study on at home and demonstrate during the test itself. After we've got the introduction out of the way, we are going to look at task 1 and task 2. We have 2 different writing tests to complete on CELPIP. And for each of these questions, I'm going to share with you a real CELPIP writing question. Now, these questions were taken from a past test that is no longer live. So you'll never see these questions again in the future. But because they were once upon a time real CELPIP test questions, they give us really authentic practice today. So for each of these, we're going to talk about our own ideas. How would we answer these questions if we face them on our own test? We're going to use the Zoom chat to share ideas. So think of this session as an online study group, if you will. And after we've had a chance to do some thinking, I'll share with you different responses from real test takers who actually faced these questions when they took CELPIP at some time in the past. And as a group, we're going to analyze. We're going to look for the strengths and the weaknesses within each of these responses. And we're also then going to reveal the score that these people achieved. We will be covering a variety of scores today to give you all a little bit of comfort knowing what's expected at each level. And then at the very, very end today, I'll take about 3 minutes or so of time to quickly run down the free study materials that we can offer, and also introduce you to the online bookstore if you wanted to make a purchase in the future. So let's get underway with our writing test overview, introduction. Here we go. So again, there are 2 tasks, as I mentioned earlier, on the CELPIP writing test. And the writing component is the third of the 4 skills that you will complete when you take CELPIP. In this order, this is the entire test. Writing is number 3. It takes close to 1 hour to finish the whole writing test. So you've got 27 minutes to write the email and 26 minutes to respond to the survey question. There is a word count required, and you'll find a word counter right on the computer screen. So you'll want to achieve between 150 and 200 words. That will count for part of your score. It's a little tiny element that is factored into the score. So we do ask you to follow the instructions. And all the questions that you'll encounter are going to be based on day-to-day situations and communication. So a lot of these writing questions, I'm guessing you probably have life experience where you've actually experienced something similar. And I would encourage you to bring in your own life experience when you're creating details to make the writing really interesting. When we write about true events for ourselves, the ideas tend to come to us much more quickly. So that's a big tip that I'll share with you now. If you haven't actually experienced the precise situation in the test question, my guess is that you'll be able to relate to it and easily imagine doing so, because again, the questions are day-to-day based. Here is your first question. I'm going to just run down. We're not going to answer this particular question, by the way, but I wanted to show you the computer format. So there are 2 screens, kind of like a book. And I know it sounds obvious, but you'll want to read the left-hand side first, because that's where you get the background information to understand what you're doing. On the right-hand side here, you've got your instructions. And also for task 1, which we're looking at now, it's the email question. These bulleted points here are the writing tasks. These are the main ideas that you must address throughout the writing. You're going to make up your own details, but you have to address these topics. Usually there are 3 bulleted points and sometimes even 4. So please do make sure you address each of them and follow those instructions. And I've already got my first question that I get every time I do this webinar is, well, what happens if I don't follow the instructions? What happens if I go above the word count? And here's the answer to that. We know, and it says right here in the instructions, 150 to 200 words. So please try to follow that. If you go over the 200 word count just a little bit, the raters will give you a 10% leeway, 10% above or below that word count before penalty is applied to the score. So when you do the math, 10% of 200 is 20, right? So if you were to write 220 words, you're not going to be penalized under scoring. But if you go above that, then yes, a slight penalty will be applied. So again, I always say rule of thumb, just follow the instructions and there will be no worry about whether you're losing marks or not. And as I said, you're using an email format because you're writing an email. And for this CELPIP test, you can start with the greeting. You do not have to worry about date, about subject, about the to and from lines. Just start with the greeting and carry on through the rest of the email itself. Okay, writing task 2 is structured the same way. This is the survey response question. You still must read both sides because the left-hand side, once again, gives you the background context. The right-hand side over here is going to give you the instructions again. You have to make a choice for this question. You can see option A and B. So you would select one of those as your opinion and then give reasons to support it. So again, it's the same word count and the instructions tell you very clearly between 150 to 200 words. And once you've presented your opinion in writing, you've selected either option A or B, of course, you must give reasons. So this test question does not give you the main ideas like the email did. So it's completely up to you to come up with your details. So a little bit more thinking perhaps involved for the second response. Okay, now that we're familiar at least with what the instructions say, we're now looking at the computer screen, but a little bit further back, because I wanted to point out the timer. This is important too. Whatever you type in that white box below, that's where you complete the response. Whatever you've got there, when that timer at the top of the screen reaches 0, that's going to be assessed for your writing score. So it's really important just to keep an eye here now and then. Check in with the time to make sure you're working at a good pace so that you'll finish. Now, some of you, the more you practice, I know there are some of you there today even that are going to finish writing the entire response, and you might even have time left on the clock. You'll finish a bit early once you get really practiced. So my best advice to you is to read over your work and make sure you're happy with it. If you see mistakes or ways to improve it, this would be a great time to do so. If you're happy with it and there are still a couple of minutes left on the time clock, you have the option of selecting the next button. So in this case, this is writing task 1. When you click next, you're obviously going to move yourself to the next writing task, which would be writing task 2 in that case. All right, but once you click next, and here's the important piece, you can't go back. There's no back button, as you can see. So it would be too late at that point to go back and add something to your answer. So only click next when you're confident and ready to move on to the next test part. The other element to know here is that you do not get to carry with you any extra time on that clock when you click next. So every single test part, writing or otherwise, is going to start with its own preset number of minutes, and that doesn't change. But again, it's nice to know that there is a next button option there as well, just in case you finish early. The word counter I mentioned earlier is on screen, so it's right below here where you're typing into the box. So you'll know when you've achieved close to those 200 words that are required of you. And believe it or not, there is a spell check on the CELPIP writing test. Now, it's not magically going to correct all of your mistakes in the sense that if you were to type an actual English word, even if it was the wrong word choice, the computer will not catch that kind of mistake. So if you look over to the left here, I've got 3 pairs of very easily confused words. So for example, that top row says staff and stuff. Those are both real English words. And if you meant to type the word staff, but you accidentally spelled it as stuff, the spell check will not catch that mistake. That would be considered a word choice error. So this is where your brain is more important than the computer tools. When you reread your work, you're going to have to make sure that all the words you've included are the words you actually intend to convey. And likewise with word and world, quite and quiet. So to double check that you've got the right word there in your own writing. If there is actually a spelling mistake and the computer does not recognize what you're trying to type, it will underline the word for you in red, just like it would do on a Microsoft Word document, if you're familiar with that. And if that's the case, then you can right-click the mouse button at the computer over that underlined word. The computer will open up a small list, usually about 3, maybe even 4 words of suggested words. It's trying to guess what you meant to say. And if you do see the correctly spelled word there, you can click on it and the computer will make the spelling adjustment for you. But again, you get the final say on whether or not you've included the correct word within the writing. So please bear that in mind as well. Okay, I'm getting lots of questions about what the raters are looking for. And as a matter of fact, that's what we're going to discuss right now. So let's get into that. So first and foremost, I'll let you know the way that the CELPIP writing test is scored. It's scored by an AI human hybrid system. It combines artificial intelligence with a human rating panel. So all of the CELPIP writing scores are reviewed and verified by the human rating team. And this ensures that the CELPIP scores are certified against the very strict rating criteria. All right, so that's how it's assessed. As far as the categories that the raters are looking for, whether it would be AI or human, there are 4 of them, and I'll discuss them briefly with you now. We are going to be referring back to this checklist of skills all throughout today's session. You'll also receive this in your study pack, and you need to be very familiar with it because demonstrating strengths in all 4 of these areas is how you're going to maximize your score on the CELPIP writing test. So the very first dimension or category of skills that we're pointing to up top is all about the content and the coherence. So basically, the more interesting, the more well-supported, the more well-developed your ideas are, the higher the quality of your writing, and therefore, the better your score will be. That's how that one works. We're going to be spending lots of time generating interesting details today in the practice. As far as vocabulary goes, the first step everybody must follow is to choose words that make sense, in the sense that they've got accurate meaning. We always need to understand the idea fully. And once the word choice is accurate, at home, I hope you're devoting some time to developing your vocabulary, because the more interesting, specific, precise, and descriptive your word choice is, once again, the higher the score is going to be. Your goal on this test, I would advise too, is to showcase a good variety of vocabulary words. So the more variety, the wider the vocab is, the better the score will be too. Readability is the third category, and I had a couple of questions already about grammar and sentences, and this is the part of this writing checklist that will assess grammar and sentence structure. So I think when we first begin to learn any language, we start off by learning short, simple sentences, right? Maybe 5 or 6 words. And once we've mastered that basic simple sentence structure, we then progress on to the next levels. We look at how to make the sentences longer and more complex and more interesting. So once again, the more complexity you are demonstrating here as you write, the higher the score is going to be. You're connecting ideas together with a good variety of conjunctions, transitions, etc. And once we've mastered those sentence structures, we then should be learning how to properly paragraph the work. So paragraphing skills help with the organization. So all of those writing elements are taken into account when issuing a score. And of course, the grammar, the spelling, the punctuation, all of those elements too are considered. Last but not least, we do have task fulfillment. And this speaks to about 4 different things, as you can see here. First of all, your answer must be complete. So if in that writing email question, you've got 3 bulleted points or main ideas that you must address them all. If you forget to address one, your answer will not be considered complete, and you would have a bit of a negative effect there on this part of the score. So again, follow the instructions, answer the question fully. The next step is to make sure that all of your details are relevant. So they all have to be on topic and address the test question. Third is the tone. And tone speaks to, in general terms, it's about how casual or how formal the response is. Tone has to do with the emotion you are creating through word choice. And we'll look at examples of that today, so you'll have a better sense of what I mean here. And last but not least, we've already discussed the word count. And again, I'm still getting lots of concerned questions about the word count. I would advise you get to close to 200. The more words that you are able to include in your writing response gives the raters more evidence of your writing ability. So somebody who's only writing 150 words, you're still following the instructions. But if you're writing 200 words, that's 50 words more that you've got the opportunity to showcase better sentence structure, better vocabulary, probably an extra idea or 2 that will help content. So my best advice is to try to get close to 200 if you can. And this is where practicing at home, maybe setting a timer and writing an email in 27 minutes. I think that's going to really help you with all of that. Okay, so great questions today. The CELPIP test itself is scored out of levels, as you can see here. So level 12 is the top score that anybody might achieve. And that means you've got advanced communication in the written language in English. All right, now the CELPIP levels on the left, you can see match very easily the CLB or the Canadian Language Benchmark levels here on the right-hand side. So if you've been living in Canada already for a while, maybe you've taken some other English type classes and an instructor has given you a CLB level. If you're already aware of your CLB level in writing or in any other part of English, then you can expect to achieve close to that score on the CELPIP test itself. The levels are designed to make it easy for each of you to understand the scoring process. Now, we call today's session Target 9+, because we're looking at writing skills that will help us achieve at least a level 9, perhaps even higher. So once again, anybody applying for permanent residency status in Canada very likely would want at least that level 9, and you'll earn more points towards immigration, of course, with the higher scores. To that end, what we're going to accomplish today, we've got 5 different real CELPIP test takers responses that we're going to look at. And those 5 scores, I'm going to let you know, or 5 responses fall into one of these scores categories. So we picked them specifically so we can see an example of what a level 7 looks like. So that's just a little bit below what our goal is for today, which is level 9. So we will see at some point in random order today an example of a level 7. We will also see a level 9, a 10, and a 12. Now, I mentioned that there are 5 responses we're going to analyze. So there will be a repeat of one of these scores. And the way we'll do this is as we get talking about the strengths and weaknesses and the responses we're looking at together, after we've discussed all 4 areas of the rater's checklist, I'm then going to launch an online poll in Zoom. And I'd like you to actually vote on which score here you feel the response has earned. And of course, I will reveal at the very end what score that person got. So I think it's nice today that we'll see sort of like a high beginner or low intermediate in level 7, to your intermediate, high intermediate, and advanced level today. So it gives everybody a taste of the progression of skill sets necessary for CELPIP if you are looking for a more intermediate score. So to that end, looks like the questions in the chat box I've answered or will be talking about soon. So I'm going to progress on. If you do have any other questions about CELPIP, kindly pop them in the chat and I'll try to get to them as I have a moment. But I'm going to begin now with task 1, which is writing an email. And this is the fun part. This is where all of you get to use the chat box to put forth your ideas, and we'll share thoughts together. So here's a question. This is the one we're going to workshop. Can I give you about 20 seconds to read it to yourselves, please, quietly? Okay, you have 27 minutes to complete the whole email, but the faster you can read the question, the more time you have for writing. So I think a good 20 seconds max should be a goal to get to eventually anyway. So I'm going to start off by asking you 2 true or false questions, and I invite you to use the Zoom chat box in order to answer. So our first question today, the more details you include, the more likely you are to get a high score. Is that true or is that false? What do you think based on what we just talked about? I hope everybody gets this right. We just finished talking about it. Remember back to that big checklist of those 4 categories, and we talked about content details right at the top. And I'm pleased to say that almost everybody in the Zoom chat has included the answer true. And of course, this is true, yes. If you want that intermediate score, level 9 or higher, you have to get into the regular habit of making your writing interesting. And one way to do that is to come up with very specific, precise details. So once you've introduced a main idea, you're going to back it up with your own ideas. And we're going to practice that a lot today. This is the part of writing that makes it fun, in my opinion. Okay, here's another question, and this is more of a structural thing. So dear sir or madam would be an appropriate greeting for this particular test question. Would you say true or would you say false? True or false? Could we start this, if this was your actual CELPIP test question, could you write dear sir or madam and then carry on with the rest? And I'm so pleasantly surprised today. The answer is false. And most of you have said that in the Zoom chat. This is wonderful. Every time I do this session, I get people saying, sure, true. And I'm here to say, no, please don't do this. And there's several reasons why. From a CELPIP perspective, the reason why you would not want to say dear sir or madam is because it's really vague and general. And we just finished saying the more specific and interesting your details are, the better your score is going to be. So dear sir or madam tells us nothing. Now, this particular question asks you to write to a famous author. So if you're writing to a famous author, of course, you're going to know their name. So you're going to make the name up. And that should be a relatively easy thing to do. So you'll score better for content if you actually use people's names. On the CELPIP test or in the real world, for that matter, if you don't know the person's actual name, it would be best to use the job title. I'll just let you know that right now. Okay, never use dear sir or madam. Don't do this on the CELPIP test. Don't do this in the real world either. It's actually quite outdated and old-fashioned. So we don't want to get in the habit of using structures like this. All right. Let's carry on. I'm just making the question just a little bigger. And one of you had asked, will you see the question as you're typing? And the answer is yes. If you can think back about, I don't know, 5 screens ago, I showed you the full version of the computer screen. So this question will be at the top of the computer screen, and you'll be typing into a big white typing space below this question. So yes, of course, you'll be able to refer back to this question as you're typing. So no worries there. I'm going to call on all of you now to help build this response. So on the left-hand side where it gives us the background details, it says, you are an elementary school teacher. Now, elementary school on its own refers to teaching younger children, but it could reveal any grade from about kindergarten straight through to about grade 6. In Canada, that would be the typical range for elementary school. And again, I've said it already several times. I'm going to keep saying it. If we just write in our response, I teach elementary school, That is so general, vague, and uninteresting. So what I'd encourage all of you to do, and we're going to do this right now, can we select one elementary school grade that we're going to pretend we're teaching in order to really build details for this question? So pick me a grade, please, anywhere from kindergarten to grade 6. There's no wrong answer here, but do have a peek at the right-hand side of your screen and note that you must suggest some activities that this famous author is going to do with the children. So I would strongly recommend you select a grade that you're a little bit familiar with. If you've got kids in one of these grades, that would be an easy one for you, perhaps. You can think about the activities your children are currently doing in school. If you don't have children, just think back to when you were a young child in school. Pick a grade you enjoyed, maybe a teacher you enjoyed, and go from there. So as I look in the Zoom chat, I've literally got almost every grade level represented here. So I'm just going to pick one randomly just for the heck of it. Let's go with grade 4 today, just for fun. So in grade 4, the children are about 8 years of age. So let's think of it that way. So when we get typing, that's what we're going to say. We're going to identify ourselves as a teacher of a grade 4 class. So that's a starting point. And of course, we're writing to this famous writer. Can I have a name, please? Any name will do. It can be an actual, a real person's name, or it can be a made up name. And I'm curious to see if you're going to get the gender right. There is a way to know if this writer that you're addressing in this email is a man or a woman. So I'm curious to see what names you're going to suggest. Let's have a quick look into the Zoom chat. Okay, so some of you are already starting off on the wrong foot. Let me backtrack. Is this famous author that you're writing to a man or a woman? Let's cover that first, and then we'll do the names. Is it a man? Is it a woman? There is a way to know for sure, for sure. That's why I'm asking. Okay, there we go. Good. So more of you are recognizing this is a woman to whom we're writing. And the way you know that is over here. It says, write to the writer and invite her to speak to the children. So when you see this pronoun her, it tells you that this famous writer has to be a woman. So it would not make sense to choose a man's name here. So let's choose a woman's name. Any woman's name will do. Again, it could be a famous author you know. It could just be a made up name like Jane Smith. It truly doesn't matter. So Jane Doe has just come into the chat box from Mary. Sure, we could go with that. Any other suggestions? Just for fun, just get the wheels turning. I know some of you have already put some ideas up ahead, but let's just see here. Okay, Joan Rowling, sure. Marcelo, we just said it has to be a woman. So saying Mr. John is not going to cut it here. It has to be a woman. Alice Way's coming in. What else? One more. Just for fun. And you know, folks, this has to be done quickly. This is the easy part of the test. Literally think of a name and away you go. Somebody's using my name. I'll pretend I'm a famous writer for today. Okay, let's go with Ms. Smith is a very common one. So Baumik has suggested the greeting. And here's what we're going to do next. So some of you are giving me the full name, like Joanne Rowling, somebody suggested. Here's the next step. Because we are writing to a famous writer, because it is a stranger, it's not a personal friend to us, right? And it also happens to be a famous person. This is going to be a formal email. And when we use formal writing in email structure, we cannot use the first name of the person in the greeting. I don't know if you all know that rule, but now you do. And this is applicable to the real world, not just on the CELPIP test. So I'm going to now type into the Zoom chat box using Baumik's suggestion there. I'm going to take Baumik's suggestion and I'm just going to put it in proper email structure. Can you see what I've done? Dear Ms. Smith. So we have 3 words in this greeting. Please notice that every single word in the greeting starts with a capital letter, capital D, capital M, capital S. Notice I put a period after Ms. because that's a title word. And then I put a comma after the last name, Smith. This is 100% correct structure for any greeting when you are addressing a woman in a formal sense. Okay, now if this was a man, if this truly was a man we were writing to, it would be super easy. It would be Dear Mr. Smith. Mr. is the only title word that goes with the man. But with a woman, you actually have choice, right? There's 3 title words. You have Miss, which refers to a single woman. You have Ms., which is the one I use. That's a neutral form. And then you have Mrs., which represents a married woman. And again, the next rule I'm going to mention now, and I'd like you all to memorize this, please, forever and evermore. When you're writing to a stranger, someone you don't know well who is a woman, it is not considered polite to refer to marital status. This is a customs or a cultural rule in Canada anyway. So at all times in this formal sense, we're going to go with Ms. M.S. period. That is your only option. Please do not use Miss or Mrs. as you're going to perhaps offend the reader and cause some disrespect. And we never want to do that, right? At any rate, I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to practice the structure with your capital letters, with your punctuation, and the correct title word. You've got 10 seconds to impress me in the Zoom chat. Let's go. What name? How would your greeting look if this was your actual writing question on the CELPIP test? What would it look like from your hand as you type at the computer? Let's see them. Yeah, and you can use any last name. It doesn't have to be Smith. That was just a simple example. Okay, sure. If you want to use Smith, you can. So Alina's got Dear Ms. Rowling, perfect. Dear Ms. Wong, Mandeep is saying, yeah. Dear Ms. Selvey, wonderful. Dear Ms. Rob, that's my last name. Oh, so close, Manmeet. You just forgot the comma after young, but otherwise not so bad. Yeah, I think everyone's got it. I'm noticing a few of you are forgetting the comma after the last name. Like Nana, you just forgot the comma. Dear Ms. Brown, put a comma after that last name. But apart from that, we're looking good here. Everybody's got the Ms. Simon, can you please put a period after Ms? Yeah, good. And these are picky little things. Now I'm going to caveat that with, if you forget the comma or the period on the actual CELPIP test, it is a mistake, yes, but it's such a small mistake. Honestly, it's not going to affect your score. Provided we understand who you're writing to, that's the main thing. But again, I think as we're learning these skills, you're going to probably be writing emails often in daily life too. I think it's just a really good habit to learn the proper structure, memorize it, and then you'll never get it wrong moving forward. Anyway, everyone's got a great greeting. Francia, you're the last one in the Zoom chat, so let's use yours just for example's sake today. So dear Ms. Lee, let's pretend we're writing to the famous writer, Ms. Lee. And we've already said we teach grade 4. So these two details in the opening, you come up with these in the matter of about 10 seconds. It shouldn't take you much more time than that to pick a grade, pick a name, and away you go. You want the rest of your time, your precious 27 minutes, to really focus on these main writing details and supporting examples. So it says that we have to, when we write to Ms. Lee, we have to introduce her to our school. So the obvious way to do that is to come up with the name of your school. What school did you all go to when you were a child in elementary school? This would probably be the easiest way to do it. Would anyone like to offer some suggestions in the Zoom chat? I'm going to type mine. I actually went to a couple of different public schools, but I'll just pick one that comes to mind here. And I'm also going to demonstrate, again, proper capitalization. Mine is Laurentian Public School. We've got St. Emily School, Chapel Hill, St. Annie's High School. Oh, Yesha, this is elementary school, not high school. Yeah, can't be high school. Please revise. Yorkville Elementary works. Prab, can you put a capital letter on E and S for elementary school? You need capital letters. Selvi, same thing. Capital E on the word elementary. Do not put a period after this title. Good. Everybody else is looking pretty good. Esther, you need capital C, capital S on Catholic school. Yeah. So folks, when you're naming the school, if the word school is part of the name of that or the title of the school, it has to have a capital S. Yeah. A whole thing does. So St. Thomas School, there you go. Ria's got it right. And so on, an Evergreen Elementary, and on it goes. Good. Okay, so we've got that. Let's go with St. Thomas School. So we're writing Ms. Lee. We're going to let her know that we are teaching grade 4 at St. Thomas School. So we've introduced at least the school name. Can any of you think of other details that would make this answer a little bit more interesting and also a little bit more helpful for this famous writer, Ms. Lee? The test instructions tell us that Ms. Lee lives near our school, but she probably isn't familiar with exactly where we are. So where is St. Thomas School? Where is it? How would you describe that? What kinds of details might count here? Yeah, Oluwasan is suggesting we could give the address. You could, although an address, yeah, it works. I'm not sure it'd be the most interesting. It's a bit clinical. But could we maybe give a landmark? If she lives near the school, she'd be familiar with the neighborhood, yes? So why not give a little bit of a landmark? I'll demonstrate. So as we're typing, after we said, Dear Ms. Lee, we might just say, I teach grade 4 at St. Thomas Catholic School, which is located 1 block west of the City Hall downtown. Something like that would work just fine. Prab has suggested near the United Church downtown, or whatever neighborhood you wanted to mention. You could give an intersection. at the corner of Pender and Howe Streets in the West End of Vancouver, or wherever it is you are, right? Again, the author lives near the school. So I think that would be enough. Again, you could give the address. I just think it's a bit more interesting to give a location. It's easier for the author to picture in her mind a famous landmark that she knows rather than have to use Google Maps to look up an address. That's my only thinking. That at least if you indicate where this school is, you've checked this main idea from the test instructions off your list. So I think that works. We've given 2 details for the school, the name of the school and its location. We also have to introduce Ms. Lee to the class. And we've already said we're teaching grade 4, but I think a few more details would be helpful here. Now, what details come to your mind? If you were Ms. Lee, what would you want to know about the class before you decided whether you would visit or not? What makes sense? So this is the approach to all of your writing questions and speaking for that matter on CELPIP. Just think of it logically for a moment. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. What would she want to know? Yeah, perhaps saying how many children? And Anna said the same thing. We've already established grade 4. So how many students are typical in a grade 4 class in Canada? I guess it doesn't have to be Canada, right? Could be anywhere in the world. So yeah, Yesh is suggesting maybe 30 students. Sure, does that sound good to everyone? Do you have a different idea maybe? What would be reasonable here? Give or take. Again, there's not really a wrong answer, but you still want to be fairly logical. So I would suggest anywhere from 20 to 30 would be about right. So pick a number anywhere in there. 30 was the first number suggested today. So for fun, let's just go with that. But again, you could select a different number if that was your idea. So let's say we teach 30 students in grade 4. We're located a block west of City Hall downtown, and St. Thomas Catholic Elementary School is our school. So that has been covered. We've got several supporting details. We're done with main point 1. Bear in mind, you've got 27 minutes and we still have 3 other main ideas to cover here. So we don't want to spend all of our time on just one of these main points. I think we've covered that one sufficiently. So this one might be a bit tougher, but I think together we'll be able to think of some great ideas. So we have to explain to Ms. Lee why our 30 grade 4 students really enjoy her books. And I think the best way to focus this is to actually select a book that we're currently reading. Can I open the discussion to all of you again? Can you think of the title of a book that you enjoyed reading as a young student, a young child? If you're reading books to your own children now, perhaps there's a book that comes to mind. Or if not, then just make something up as long as it sounds like it could be read by a young group of students. They're about 8 years old in grade 4. Yeah, so we're getting things like Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Wonderful. That's a real book that exists, but we could certainly imagine Ms. Lee has written it. You don't have to be factually accurate when you're making up these details. Just have a title. That's all I ask. Mandeep is suggesting Petit Prince. Now that's a French title. I don't know. We're writing in English. I'm not sure that would be the best choice, to be honest. I'd probably go with an English book myself as we're writing to this in English, right? Journey to the Center of the Earth, Alina. That's a Jules Verne book, isn't it? Great one. Yeah, we could assume Ms. Lee has written that. Wonderful. Pokemon is coming up in the Zoom chat. Fairy tales, Little George and his monkeys. Sure. Charlie on Summer Holiday. All of these titles you're suggesting, I'm not familiar with some of them, but that's okay. It just sounds interesting. Like Charlie on Summer Holiday, Atanu is suggesting. I don't know if that's a real book, but let's use it. It honestly sounds like it's something that a grade 4 or elementary school group could get into. So now that we've thought of the book, we've named it Charlie on Summer Holiday, we have to now think about why our students love this book so much. And I think this is the hard part. I'm going to suggest to you, I'm going to give you 3 broad categories that really influence our preference for different books we read. I think oftentimes we like books based on either the characters, perhaps based on the actual story events. We call that the plot. Or sometimes there might be the lesson taught throughout the story. We can call that theme. It might even be that the books themselves are beautifully illustrated. Lots of great artwork, and the children are into art. So there's 4 different ideas. Can I have you, maybe one of you even suggest which one of those 4 areas would be the easiest to work with? Those are just general ideas. So let's pick one, just one. We want to focus the answer. So character, plot, theme, or setting. What would be the most fun to develop as far as this goes? What's the easiest for you to work with? We could do any of those, I think, but let's pick one. Okay, a lot of you, or some of you anyway, are getting into character. Yeah, I think characters are probably the easiest to imagine. They're a little bit more tangible. So if we suggest to Ms. Lee that our grade 4 students absolutely love, we're not just going to say the characters. That's way too general. We're going to pick a character. And since the book is called Charlie on Summer Holiday, why don't we talk about Charlie? To me, that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we say, our students absolutely love how funny the main character Charlie is. So we've indicated they like the humor in the book. We're focusing on the character of Charlie. If you really want to go for a strong intermediate answer or above, you're going to actually give an example of what Charlie does that makes him so funny. That might take you a little bit of time to think about. Does anyone here have a suggestion? And this is hard. This is now way up there, probably even above level 9 if you ask me. But yeah, we focused on Charlie. He's so funny. The grade 4 students love him so much. So if it were me, I might just say, in particular, the children thought it was hysterical when Charlie accidentally took the wrong suitcase on the train ride. And when he opened it, he had nothing but his grandmother's nightdress to wear. I don't know. I just made that up off the top of my head because I think it sounded funny. And I can imagine all these little grade 4 students laughing hysterically, trying to imagine Charlie wearing his grandmother's nightdress. So again, that just came to me off the top of my head. If you've got the imagination to make something like that up, go for it. But at the very least, you want to focus. Again, why do we like the book? Okay, it's funny, but why? The characters are funny. Who's the character? It's Charlie. Charlie is so funny that it makes my students laugh every time we read a chapter. That would also be sufficient, I think, for this level that we're talking about. Wonderful. Okay. Tanvi is suggesting a different idea. I wanted to share this. We're still talking about Charlie, the character. But what Tanvi is doing is no longer talking about funny, and this is okay. Tanvi is suggesting that Charlie is able to problem solve, and he always comes up with creative solutions. So that could be another reason why our students like the book so much. We're still talking about character and Charlie in particular, but rather than humor, you're going for problem solving. Both are fine, but what I don't want you to do is mix and match your ideas. So if you're talking about problem solving, just talk about problem solving. Don't switch gears and start giving examples of funny parts of the book. Do you understand what I mean? It has to be organized on one topic. That's what makes really strong, coherent writing. Anyway, we've talked about how the character of Harry is funny. So let's continue to develop that idea. The next step here, the invitation to the classroom, is probably the easiest part of this whole answer. You literally, somewhere in your answer, need to invite Ms. Lee to come to the classroom. The only tip I would give here is to give a bit of a range. You don't want to just say, can you come on Friday? Because what if Miss Lee is really busy on Friday? She's a famous author and giving her one day might not be enough. So I would suggest you give a little bit of a range, but keep it relatively short. You might just say to Ms. Lee, we are finishing reading your novel, Charlie on Summer Vacation. We'll be finished by the end of this week. Would you be free to come into the class to visit anytime between March 24th and April 7th? So I'm sort of giving a 2-week range. And then you might even follow that up with, we routinely hold our English classes in the morning between 9 to noon. Would that time be suitable for you? So we want to be very respectful of Ms. Lee's time. And we'll give a range. So hopefully some day within that 2-week range, she's available. But we also don't want to dictate to her when she has to come. It has to be up to her. So we have to watch our tone. So that's the only thing. Selvi suggesting by the end of the month, that's still very vague, right? By the end of the month could be anywhere from now. Literally, if you're only at the beginning of the month, it could be 31 days from now. So I think what I would do is give more of a range. Maybe you could say within the next 2 weeks. I think that would be just a little bit more precise. I think giving an actual date range is the way I would go, but that's just me. I'm a very literal thinker. But yeah, give a range, but you want to be a little bit precise here so that you can get a better response from Ms. Lee, I think, right? Yeah. Yesha says any day in the month of April. That's a little open-ended in my opinion. And I'm just going from what I would prefer. If I was a famous author, that's a little bit too much time. I like the 9 to noon, but any day in April is a little bit unclear, particularly as we probably won't be in class on weekends. So you're not quite communicating the idea very clearly. Yeah, so I would suggest. Now, Simon, you've got the opposite mistake. Don't give her one day. April 20th, come in from 1 to 4. No. What if Miss Lee is busy on April 20th? And then that's it. We don't get a visit with her. So again, give a bit of a range, but you want it to have a start and an end date that is suitable. I honestly think about it within a 2-week period is probably the best. But again, it's up to you, completely up to you. You decide, but that would be sort of just things to think about anyway. Okay, last but not least, this might be tough, but we can do it as a group, I think. What can Ms. Lee do with the children when she comes to visit? Now, here's the trick. You're not just going to start recommending any old activity that jumps into your mind. Whatever you decided was the reason why the students like the book so much, I want you to take that same idea and build a classroom activity around it. So we gave a great example about how the children find, was it Harry? I already forget, Harry on summer holiday, was that his name? We already said why the students loved Harry. He's so funny. He accidentally took the wrong suitcase on vacation and ended up with his grandmother's nightdress, something like that we said. So if we've hinged our whole reason for the students loving this book on how funny that main character is, does that give you any ideas about what Ms. Lee can do with the children in an activity in class? Can you build it around Charlie and something to do with humor? I think that would make a very strong, well-connected response. And that is definitely going to help you on the content and coherence score. Coherence means how well everything fits together. So these are definitely intermediate style skills. We're looking at the levels 9 to 12 right now. Okay. Sylvie suggesting perhaps the students could make up a crossword game using the characters' names in the story. Sure, that would work. It doesn't really hit on the humor aspect, but you're still touching on the character part of it. And you're also giving a very precise example. So I think it's interesting and I think it could work. You know, 8-year-old students, at least back when I was teaching elementary school, used to like doing crosswords. Don't know if they still do, but I think it's a fair point. What else maybe? So Yesh is talking about making props. Did you want to turn this activity into an art-based one? Maybe that's what you mean. Aline is talking about making an acting activity. You know what? That would be tons of fun. I can just imagine. Let's go with that. Let's develop that. So could we ask Ms. Lee, could we put the students into groups of about 3 students per group? We can assign them each a different character from the book. One of them will be Charlie, and they can act out their favorite scene. Perhaps we can even give them scenes that really promote the humorous nature of the main character. I love that. All of that would be completely suitable for a young class. What kid doesn't like role playing and acting and making stories up, right? A lot of young students would enjoy that. But again, you're really hitting on the theme of character development. And if we could even sneak in that little connection to humor, even better. So this is coming along. I can already imagine how this email is going to write itself. So these are the types of ideas that you'll want to start thinking about as you're typing, if you're targeting a higher level score, of course. Okay, so with that in mind, let's jump over to our very first sample response. I've got 3 different people's responses to this very question. It's an email, so email structure, as you can see. Now, I notice at the top right away, we have a small mistake. It says, Dear Mr. Smith. We've already discussed this, and we know that Mr. is wrong because that's a man. This should be Dear Ms. Smith, that much we know. Again, it's a mistake. The raters would notice the mistake, but it's really not that serious because we do have the greeting. We understand we're writing to the author. The greeting has been structured correctly from a grammar sense. You've got capital letters and punctuation where they need to be. So that type of mistake is really not going to affect the score. So I'll maybe just sort of reassure you there. Nobody on CELPIP is looking for perfection. You want to really target the main areas. You want to do those quite well. Okay, try to get this right, honestly, if you can. But if you do make a little mistake like this, I don't want you to stress about it. It's really not going to make a difference in the long run. Because remember that big, long checklist? There are so many other skills there that are much more important that we need to target. Anyway, so we're writing to Dear Ms. Smith, we'll assume. If you look at the very bottom quickly, you'll notice the name of this CELPIP test taker is Lucas McTeacher. And I don't think that is the test taker's real name. They probably made up that last name, and that's okay. So when you complete your own CELPIP test, you need a signature for sure because it's an email, but you do not have to use your real name. If you'd like to protect your privacy, you can do something like this, Lucas McTeacher. That's just fine. So let's assume Lucas is our CELPIP writer today, writing to Dear Ms. Smith. Can you take about 20 or 30 seconds? I'll mute my mic and then you can read the response yourself. Start thinking about strengths and weaknesses, and I'm going to lead a discussion through that entire checklist to see what Lucas has done well and where he still needs to improve. So go ahead and read it first. Okay, so even if you didn't quite finish, I think you've got a taste anyways of Lucas's writing. So remember, we will reveal the score at the end of our discussion. But for right now, if you don't mind, I'm going to start backwards. Remember that big long reader's checklist? I'm going to start at the bottom with the task fulfillment because I simply want to double check first that Lucas has at least addressed all of those bulleted points. There were 4 of them from the test instructions that we've just finished discussing ourselves. So remember that very first main idea we must address is to introduce Ms. Smith to the school and the class. So I'm going to underline the details there that Lucas uses within this email to do that. We'll talk about content in a minute. As you can see, this is not very detailed. We'll talk about content in just a moment. But for right now, if we just look at task fulfillment, at least we can say that Lucas has indeed addressed this particular task on the CELPIP test. The second task was to explain why the students like the book. And Lucas does do that right here, where I've underlined. We need to issue an invite to the classroom at some point. And indeed, Lucas has done that too. And also explain what the author can do with the children. And there is Lucas's addressment of that particular point. So all 4 points have been addressed. We definitely want to revise the content, but as far as just finishing off the task, we've at least addressed them, and that is considered a strength under task fulfillment. The word count is also part of the score, and Lucas has followed the instructions between 150 to 200 words. So we're starting off on the right track here. The other element here is tone. And tone throughout is very polite. It's fairly formal. It's very respectful and polite. There's only one small mistake with the tone, and it happens to be the sign off. So again, I realize that the word faithfully and faithfully yours, that might be used as a common sign off in different parts of the world, and that's fair. But in Canadian culture, this greeting is considered unusual and inappropriate. So we all have to understand that if we're living and working in Canada, if you sign off an email this way, it might just be considered a little bit unusual. So can we actually learn some more customarily used sign-offs if you're communicating here in Canada? Simon in the Zoom chat has already given us one of the most common, which is sincerely. Wonderful. You've spelled it right. You've got a capital S and you put a comma at the end. And Atanu has also done so. Good. That is 100% correct on how you would formulate your sign-off. So sincerely works. Are there any other greetings that you know about that you might use? That's just one idea. Perhaps saying best wishes. Yeah, it's okay, but it's not great. I honestly wouldn't use that one. I think if you're using sincerely, and the other one is regards. Can you see what Vanessa just wrote there? Regards, capital R, a comma afterwards. 100% correct. No, Oluwasa, don't get fancy. Don't start adding all sorts of words with very kind regards. No, that would not be considered natural or common here for sure. Tanvi, do not use faithfully. Never use faithfully, not in Canada. Sorry. Again, it might be used elsewhere, but it's not done here. Timothy, don't use yours. We've just said that. No, don't do that. So your choices are sincerely or regards. Manmeet, don't do that. Yours sincerely, nope. Marcelo, respectfully, nope. Doesn't work here. Nope. And it's kind of frustrating, isn't it? Sometimes we have to really change our writing styles to suit our purpose, but that's what writing is all about. And when we look at tone, that is the whole point. You're addressing a famous author here in Canada, so we need to learn proper customary sign-offs for an email. All right. So if you want to get a little fancy, and I'm cautioning you not to get too fancy, here's what you can do. So I'm going to again type in the word regards into the Zoom chat. Some of you have already suggested this, and the way it's structured here is correct. Capital R to start, comma afterwards. Sometimes people like to type in a couple of words. So you might see this. So I've just typed in kind regards. That can be used here as well. Here's the situation though. If you wanted to start using 2 words in your sign off, you actually have to put a capital on the first word, like I've done for kind, capital K, but that second word does not get a capital. It's just a regular smaller case R, and we still have the comma. So if you can remember the rules for capitalization, I would say you're now ready to use 2 words. So kind regards is one possible option. You might also have seen best regards. That sometimes is used as well. But again, look at the capital letter changes, right? Only the first word in the sign off is capitalized. The second word is not. So that is a rule to be memorized. And if you can't remember it, please just use 1 word, because you know the single word always is going to start with a capital, whether it's regards or sincerely. You'll never go wrong with either of those 2 greetings. So those would be the 2 best ones to use. Anyway, again, faithfully yours in this situation here in Lucas's email. It's a small tone issue. It's going to be noticed. It's not going to completely lower the entire score by a whole level. It's not that serious, but it's definitely something to note. And again, something to adjust for your own writing. Okay. Now that we've finished talking about task fulfillment in its entirety, again, that includes all the tasks have been addressed, the word count's right, we have a little tiny tone mistake and we fixed it now. We're done with task fulfillment for now. I'd like to jump back to the top of that Rader's checklist to look at the content and the coherence. So where we've underlined these main ideas, all 4 of them, the main ideas, they're evident in the sense that at least they've been addressed, that as you hopefully noticed on your own, most of these details are not very precise at all. Lucas has not specified. We don't know what grade the students are in. We don't know what book the students have been reading. We don't even fully understand why they enjoy the book. If you look at that first paragraph, all Lucas has said is that the students find the novel simple to understand and thoughtful. That really doesn't tell us much. I don't know what that means. Again, we talked about how the characters were so funny, or Harry was such a problem solver. The students loved that. So we definitely want to have more precision, more interest here. More detail is needed for all 4 tasks, frankly, especially the introduction of the class and the school. We don't even know what school we're teaching at or where. We just know it's an elementary school in the West End. So again, Lucas has more work to do if he wants to really elevate the content score here. Okay, so not such a strong performance under content. Let's shift gears and look at the vocabulary. So vocabulary choices, remember how words have to be accurate first. And most of the words here, we understand the meaning. I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind, for time's sake, and underline some words that I think demonstrate Lucas's best vocabulary. So words like literature teacher, simple to understand, at least he's phrased this group of words together correctly. Process of writing, inspired. So these words or phrases are accurate, but also show a little bit more precision. They're a little bit more interesting or focused. But then sometimes throughout the writing, Lucas will use words like this, like thoughtful. The word thoughtful all by itself might seem like an interesting word choice, but when you look at the meaning here, this word doesn't tell us a lot of detail. So if a book is thoughtful, what on earth does that mean? Does it mean that it's making the students consider ideas that they've not ever been introduced to before? Is it making the students reflect on their own experiences and how they might change something moving forward? I honestly don't know, right? So it's up to Lucas to tell us what he means here by how is this book thoughtful? So that's maybe not the best word choice there. So again, choose words that give a lot of detail as well as make the writing more interesting. So that's just basic vocab. If we shift gears now to the very last element to look at, it's readability. This is the element that focuses on your sentences, your paragraphing, your grammar, your writing. And I would say if you look at the basic email structure, it looks good. Like we have a greeting, we've got 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, a concluding statement, a sign off, and a signature. So yes, the email structure has been completed. That's great. And we have distinct paragraphs. But when you actually look at the details included within each paragraph, you can see that Lucas has not yet learned the rules quite all the way. The rules of paragraphing state that you can only discuss one main idea in each and every paragraph. The moment you have a different main idea, you must begin a new paragraph. And if you look at this first paragraph here, Lucas talks about, first of all, he gives a very basic introduction to the school and what he's teaching, and then he dives right into the novel and why the students enjoy that. These are two different main ideas, so they should be separated out into two separate paragraphs. Now down here, he issues the invite and suggests an activity, which is fine. But then in this paragraph, he continues with the invite. He gives a couple of days. Monday, or literature classes happen every Monday and Friday between 9 and 11. So this detail goes along with the invite. So again, the paragraphing skills are a little bit chaotic. We don't yet have the proper structure. And truly, that does make it a little bit harder for us to quickly identify the main ideas. So that would be something that Lucas would want to work on for sure. All right. And as far as the grammar goes, you may have noticed there are some little tiny mistakes. I'll point you out one here. Tell us more about you novel. Well, we know that means your novel, right? If you even notice that mistake at all. So making a little mistake like this now and then is not going to affect the score because it's so small and it doesn't affect our ability to understand. But if we make lots of little mistakes like this, it will start to eventually have a negative effect. And the worst case scenario is if we include ideas like this. So the whole sentence reads, I think this meeting will be useful for those who is interesting for everyone. So the syntax there, syntax is the word choice and the proper order of words to convey meaning. It's not natural and it's not correct. So this circled phrase is a major grammatical error that makes it difficult for us to understand the meaning. So this type of mistake is going to have a negative effect under readability, as it is considered a more serious grammatical error. Okay, so with that being said, again, think about all four areas. We have identified some strengths and some weaker areas that Lucas is going to want to work on. So I'm showing you again the CELPIP chart, and I'm going to launch the first online poll here on Zoom. So you should be seeing that right now on your computer. Can you please click and select which level you think Lucas likely earned on this response based on his performance that we've just analyzed? So it's either a level 7, a level 9, a 10, or a 12. So let's try to use the Zoom poll, if you don't mind, instead of the Zoom chat. I'm not looking at the Zoom chat right now as it's too confusing. So if you want, I'm going to turn off the Zoom chat box because people are not following instructions. Okay. For anyone that put your vote in the Zoom chat, would you kindly now go back to the Zoom poll that's online and would you make your vote count there? I'm going to give you an extra 10 seconds to get that vote in. If you're taking this webinar on a computer, you should be able to see the poll. Okay. Excellent. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. I think that's pretty good. About 70% of you have participated, so we've got a fair turnout. This is the fun part. Here's your results. I'm sharing them with you now, so you can see how your guess matches up to the rest of the audience online today. So an overwhelming 82% of you have suggested that this is a level 7, and only 18% suggested that it's level 9. We didn't have anybody select level 10 or level 12, which is a good thing. So one of these answers is correct. It is either level 7 or level 9, and I will reveal the score for you now. It is indeed a level 7. Yes. So if you did guess level 7, you are absolutely correct. Level 7 would be considered about sort of high beginner, more approaching intermediate level. And when you take your CELPIP test, you'll get your score for writing, of course, and attached to the score report is going to be what we call a performance profile. And these performance profiles are little write-ups that summarize in general terms what somebody who is earning that writing score should be able to demonstrate skills-wise. So I went ahead and I bolded out the important concepts of level 7 so we can really focus on them. So level 7 writers are still generally they have good control of simple grammar, which we saw from Lucas. They're starting to experiment with some more complex structures. But as you could see with Lucas, he doesn't have consistent control there yet. He's still got some words and phrases that are a little bit, need some tightening up to really clarify meaning. The vocabulary words used at level 7 still tend to be more on the common side, which is what we saw. Every now and then, though, we will get some more precise or formal vocab. So again, level 7 is approaching. It's getting closer to that intermediate level. It just has a little bit more work to do before it can be considered full-on intermediate. So yeah, level 7 is still a strong performance. So Lucas did definitely demonstrate some skill sets there that are desirable for the CELPIP test. Let us move on. Same question, different writer. So if you look at the top, her greeting is right. Dear Ms. Smith. If you look at the very bottom, this CELPIP test taker made up a name, I'm pretty sure, and her name is Mrs. Appleby. So can you take about 30 seconds to read the response to yourself first, please? And when you're ready, if you want to type in the Zoom chat, if you think that this is higher a level than Lucas or the same level as Lucas, you can also do that. But I'll leave you about 30 seconds of quiet time to read it first. Okay, before we really get into that checklist of skills, is this one higher level, do you think, or is it about the same? So maybe select one of those words, either higher or same. We'll go from there. I'm curious to see how you're approaching these responses. It's really important for each of us to know what an advanced or intermediate score looks like, and then you're more likely to achieve those skills yourself. Okay, so I'm really pleased that in the Zoom chat right now, every single person is saying this is definitely higher level. And you are definitely correct. Yes, this is much higher level than what we saw Lucas do for his level 7. Okay, and just like we did with Lucas, let's quickly see if Mrs. Appleby addresses all 4 of those tasks. So remember, she's supposed to give an introduction to the school first. She does that here and the class. She's supposed to explain why the children like the book so much. And there we go. There's supposed to be an invite to the classroom, and we've done that, looks like, and also a suggestion of an activity. So what could the author, in this case, Ms. Smith, do with the students? So we've got all 4 parts addressed. So Lucas and Mrs. Appleby both scored well for task fulfillment in the sense that they both addressed all 4 main points. So that's a strength. You're noticing here on Mrs. Appleby's, even though the writing looks more interesting, there are still a few more points that can be more thoroughly discussed. So do you notice in that 3rd paragraph where she says the activity would require a 20-minute talk followed by some questions at the end? What's missing there, do you think? What's missing? If you were Ms. Smith and Mrs. Appleby says to you, hey, come on in for 20 minutes, give a talk, and then we'll take some questions at the end. What's missing? Nobody's got it. Oh, there we go. Bahar has it. Yeah. Well, what is the topic of the talk? So we don't just say to someone, come on in and give a 20-minute talk. We want to guide them, right? So we have to suggest the topic. We have no idea. Ms. Smith would have no idea what this 20-minute talk is all about. So that's definitely a detail that could be added in there. So just think about these things as you're looking at others' responses and as you are actually writing your own. But overall, at least all 4 points have been addressed, as I say. Her word count is correct. And again, we talked about this earlier when we started today's session, but I'll say it again. Both Lucas and Mrs. Appleby followed the word count. We have to achieve between 150 to 200 words. Now, Lucas had about 157 words or something like that, if I recall. And that was correct. But look at Mrs. Appleby, 197 words. She's got about 40 extra words in here in the response. And you can see yourselves how much more detail she's got and how much more interesting the answer is. So even though we want to follow the word count, I think by getting closer to 200 words, we're also supporting a stronger content and vocabulary score. So bear that in mind. Her tone is perfect, very respectful. She has the correct sign off, even with the right capital letter to start and the comma afterwards. So all of that's wonderful. You know, it's friendly, but it's not too casual. So we've hit on the right tone for all of this as well. So task fulfillment is definitely stronger than what we saw from Lucas's response in that regard. Let's get into content. And this is Mrs. Appleby's time to shine. So in the very opening of this paragraph, we know already she's identified St. Mary's Elementary School on Main Street. She teaches third grade. All of these details are present here, and none of them were present in Lucas's response. So that's the first most obvious difference. But what I really wanted to draw your attention to is the extra interesting detail that Mrs. Appleby includes to go above and beyond what's expected of her. So she could have just ended by saying, I teach at St. Mary's Elementary on Main. I teach grade 3. She could have just ended and moved on to the next paragraph. But instead of that, she writes 2 full sentences there to fully explain what the school is all about, to give some more identifying features. I'll read these sentences out loud to you. She says, perhaps you have noticed our bright pink mural in the neighborhood. It gets quite the attention from people passing by. So not only is this an interesting detail, a little bit of extra, it also demonstrates different grammatical structures. That first question, or that first sentence, is a question, but it's a special type of question. We call that a rhetorical question. And we use these types of questions when we don't actually expect a response, but we want the reader to think about the idea. This demonstrates high level, intermediate to advanced level skill set to even think about adding details like this in. And again, look at the structure of that next sentence. Sure, it's short, but just look at the word choice. It gets quite the attention from people passing by. We've got different grammatical structures, verb tenses, and so on. So I see things like this and I know right away we're dealing with somebody who's practiced a lot and has a very good command of the written word for sure. So nice detail there. And then again, in the next paragraph, this is the paragraph where we say why the students like the book so much. She actually names the book. It's Edward in the Garden. She explains that the students find it very funny, so that's why they like this book, but she creates a scene. If the book is called Edward in the Garden, she uses the main character Edward, and she describes a scene where Edward is fighting the rabbits off with his carrots. And if you know anything about 7-year-old children, you can imagine them finding this so funny, right? I can just picture in my mind all of these students laughing in class. So again, coming up with such precise and interesting and suitable details is another marker of quite advanced level writing as well. Okay, she also added in one other detail that Lucas didn't, which is identifying how many students are in the class. So I think that was a good opportunity there for her. All of these details are very believable and appropriate and really make the writing pop. It's so much more interesting than what we saw earlier from Lucas's response. So that's your content and your coherence. The vocabulary as well is incredibly high level. And I'm wondering, before I underline some great examples, would you like to point out a couple of words that caught your eye? If you could pick out 1 or 2 words that are quite high level, precise, interesting, descriptive, which words would you select here? Just have a quick look at the response and we'll go from there. Yeah, I'm not surprised to see you've all found the words like mural and thrilled, delirious, chuckling. Those were all words I noticed as well. And I think you've got pretty much the majority or the most obvious ones. Yeah, good. And it's not even just delirious, it's delirious with laughter. So if you're delirious, it means you're out of your mind, almost crazy. But she's making this picture in our minds of all of these young grade 3 students that are laughing so hard, they're practically falling on the floor. So again, it's very descriptive. That's what makes it so interesting. And again, words like inspiration and honor to host you. So we're capable at this stage in an advanced setting to take several words and group them together with proper order, which is called syntax. So all the meaning is quite clear here, right? There's one tiny little mistake, and I'm going to circle it for you now in the very last paragraph. It's a word choice error or a spelling mistake. It kind of depends how you look at it. But right now it says, your presence would motive and guide the students greatly. It shouldn't be motive. What should it be? What would be the right way to correct that little mistake? It would, motivate. It would motivate and guide the students greatly. So it's probably just a little, what I call a careless error. Looking at all the other high-level vocabulary words, I would assume that Mrs. Appleby knows what the word motivate is, right? That makes sense. I think she was just, again, careless. She was just in a rush to finish and maybe didn't proofread the work. We don't know. So it is a mistake. I guess we would consider that a word choice mistake, but it's only one mistake. And we have to remember there are so many details and strengths all the way throughout this response that the strengths far outweigh that one little tiny word choice mistake. So bear that in mind. this mistake wouldn't affect the score based on her ability at all. So again, nobody's looking for perfection from you. And that's a really great thing to know when you're taking a test. The only other slight weakness here, there aren't any other major grammatical errors. Everything makes sense. The only other slight weakness that the raters who gave this a score were commenting on is that we might have used a slightly different sentence structures. So all of these ideas are wonderful, but the sentences are about the same length. So they're more simple. And then when we do get a longer sentence like this last one, we're using sometimes the basic conjunctions like and in order to connect them together is all. So the raters just say wonderful writing, but a little bit more upper level or a little bit more variety in some connections would be wonderful. But again, it's just one small point amid all of the other major strengths that we've seen. Let's see what you think about this one. So I'm going to relaunch the exact same poll that we've already looked at here. Fresh poll. I'm going to disable the chat box because I don't want you to put your vote in the chat box. You're now directed right to the Zoom poll. So what do you think? Is this a level 9, a 10, sorry, a level 7 rather, a 9, a 10, or a 12? So I'll give you about 15 more seconds to log your votes there. And let's see. And while you're doing that really quickly, Marcus wants to know, should you not be saying your name in the beginning of the email? And no, you shouldn't, because you're signing your email with your name at the bottom, right? So that would be more typical. Yeah, it's not necessary to put your name again at the beginning. All right, that should be enough time. Anyone who wants to participate probably has. So I'm going to share your results, and oof, we have a mixed bag here. All 4 levels have been voted upon, but it looks like the overwhelming majority of 60% have selected a level 10. All right, so with that in mind, let me show you the score that Mrs. Appleby actually earned. I love this. You're all going to be pleasantly surprised, maybe. She got a level 12. Level 12. This is the top score that anybody can achieve on CELPIP writing. So this is one example anyway of what a level 12 looks like. And what a level 12 writer can do is here. They can create well-connected sentences. Now, Mrs. Appleby's sentences were grammatically correct. This part was maybe just a slight weakness for her particularly, but overall level 12 writers can create well-connected sentences and paragraphs. Every single paragraph was structured flawlessly. She didn't mix and match ideas like we saw Lucas do in level 7. So by level 12, we know a thing or two about paragraph writing and we can organize our thoughts appropriately. They demonstrate a broad range of grammatical structures. This is why I read out loud to you the 2 sentences in her first paragraph. Remember that rhetorical question? Perhaps you have seen the bright pink mural in the neighborhood. And then all of the other funky verb tenses. It gets quite the attention from people passing by and so on. So again, we're going for broke. It's an expression that means we know a lot of different structures and we're trying to demonstrate the full capability of our knowledge as we write. So a lot of the words here will be precise, specialized, and formal. And we saw lots of evidence of that, like delirious with laughter. That was wonderful. Chuckling on the floor, right? All of these very precise word choices and some common words too. So when we get into the level 11 and 12, which is considered advanced, we're able to almost switch back and forth between precise and common, depending on the purpose that we're trying to achieve. So bear that in mind. And this all speaks to stylistic choices, right? When we've mastered the basic foundations of writing in this advanced state, we then have more time and ability to focus on this style. So that's what really puts a good spin on it. Level 12 for sure. And even after reading that first paragraph, I thought, wow, this is advanced. And then reading the rest of the ideas with Edward fighting the rabbits off with the carrots and on it goes. This definitely jumped out as an advanced level score to me for sure. That's level 12. So you've seen level 7, and then we've jumped all the way up to level 12. Let's look at our third and final response here for this email question. Looks like this person, oh, it's a mistake. Says, Dear Christine Miller, we know that's wrong. Can somebody fix that for me in the Zoom chat really quickly, please? It shouldn't be Dear Christine Miller. What should it be? You got it. Yesha, yeah, good. Ria, good. Dear Ms. Miller, we know that that's what it should be. Again, it's a mistake. The raters will notice that. It's one little tiny mistake, and we understand you're writing to the author. And it is a woman after all, so she got that part right. I would argue it probably wouldn't affect the score too much. But again, if you know how to do it right, do it right. Dear Ms. Miller is what it should be. At the very bottom, I see that our CELPIP test taker's name is Jennifer Clark. Can you take about 30 seconds, please, to read over Jennifer's writing, and then we'll do another good analysis of hers, and we'll move on to task 2. Okay, so not bad, Jennifer Clark, right? Not bad at all. I think as we're finishing up with our email question here from task 1, we're going to do a deep dive in a way that I've got the guiding questions on the right-hand side here in gold. We're going to start with the content this time. So these are the questions that the raters ask themselves as they look over your response. So for content, they want to know, how well are your ideas organized and developed? And if we look at Jennifer Clark's writing, I would argue the question at the bottom saying, is the writer's purpose clear? And I would say, yes, it's absolutely clear. The whole point of this email is to invite a famous author to visit the students. And Jennifer Clark has done that correctly in the first paragraph. Look at her wording. She doesn't copy questions or words rather from the test instructions. She uses her own phrasing. She says, the students would absolutely love it if you could spare the time to visit. So that's her way of inviting Ms. Miller to the classroom. So that's wonderful. Usually your purpose will go in the first paragraph, just like Jennifer Clark has done. And in her closing paragraph, she returns to this invite. She says, it would simply be amazing if you could come and inspire the students. So she's reinforcing how much they would love to have Ms. Miller there. So purpose is definitely very, very clear. The main ideas, those 4 bulleted points, are pretty much supported with details. She probably missed a few. It's hard sometimes to get them all on a test. But I think for the most part, look at the underlying details. So we've got evident or attention given to the school. Up top, it's the school name. It's Killarney Elementary. We know where it is. It's near the recreational center, close to Rupert Street and 45th Avenue. We know the name of the book in the second paragraph, Unicorn Land. And again, we understand that there's a character named Misty and a Lonely Dragon Herald and on. So several of the main points here are definitely supported with specific details that Jennifer is generating herself. And what else we can point out is the fact that she's writing about Unicorn Land. This is the book that's already been identified. And when she gets into the activity, when she wants Ms. Miller to do an activity to inspire the students how to write, she references Unicorn Land again, referring back to the book that they're reading. So again, this is called coherence. When you establish one idea earlier on and you return to that idea and continue to develop it in other ways, this is really great, strong coherence. So we start to see more of this at about the level 9 and higher. It's a tougher skill to master, but again, we're practiced by the time we hit level 9 and probably could achieve these with a little bit more ease. Now, as far as vocab goes, I've got the different guiding question for you on the right-hand side here now. It says, what is the range of your vocabulary and can you use it naturally? And if you ask me to find examples of precise words, I could definitely find some for sure. Here we go. Huge fans of your books, hang on to every word, sense of wonder and amazement, and writing sessions. But I would also suggest that there are some repetitive language uses. And I'm not sure any of you noticed this on your own, but take a look at the screen. I've color coded it for you. So the blue words are words that are very precise. We've identified most of these already. The orange words, though, are quite either vague or repetitive. Can you please look at the orange words on screen and let me know in the Zoom chat box what the problem is? What's the weakness here with the vocabulary? Do you notice? Oh, Oz can notice is good. Anybody else notice? Have a look there at the orange words. Yeah, repetition of which word in particular? There we go. Yeah, the repetition of the word create. So whether she says creativity, create, creates, creation, all of those words belong to the same root word family, to create. And I think she's used that expression about 5 times at least. And that is far too much repetition. So this is a weakness with the vocab. Yes, we don't ever want to repeat to that extent. But once again, it's one weakness. And we have to consider all of those blue words on screen, right? We have so much evidence of precise words that do show interest and novelty. So we can never just base a score on one mistake is the takeaway here. So a bit of repetition with the vocab. I'll also point out to you that we do have repetition in the third paragraph with the ideas right here. So her whole activity, she is having writing sessions. She invites Ms. Miller to come to class to inspire the students how to create a fantasy world of their own. Okay, fair enough. That sounds like a decent idea, talking about Unicorn Land. But then she says to Ms. Miller, tell them how you created Unicorn Land. Well, that's kind of the same thing as what's over here. We're still creating that fantasy world. And then what contributed to your creation? Well, that is exactly the same thing as creating Unicorn Land, which is exactly the same thing as creating a fantasy world. And finally, how did you put together so many adventures? That's the same thing as here and here. So just about every single idea included in this third paragraph repeats the same basic idea. Yes, it's correct to say, please come to class, explain to the students how you created Unicorn Land. That's really all that needs to be said. And then I would change it up and say, then let's put the students into groups of 4 and have them create their own fantasy world, and then they can act it out for the class, etc., etc. So there's definitely room for improvement here in this third paragraph, but at least the point's addressed. So that's the strength there. One of you noticed in the Zoom chat as well that if you look at the bottom, those 2 blue sentences say, let me know your thoughts. Thank you for your time. Both of these are correct concluding statements, but we don't need 2 of them. We want just one. So literally pick one and then go right on to the sign off and then the signature. Okay, again, a small mistake, but I thought I'd point it out since one of you noticed it anyway. So speaking of little tiny mistakes, we're on to readability now on the right-hand side. The guiding question is, how easy is it to read and understand your response? Now, if you look at Jennifer Clark's response quite closely, you will find a couple or 3 grammar mistakes. And just for time's sake, I'll go ahead and underline them for you. Can we quickly fix them? That top one says, my students are a huge fan. Would somebody kindly rewrite that phrase for us in the Zoom chat so that it is correct? How would we make that grammatically correct? Because right now I see a small problem. Yeah. Yeah, so everyone in Zoom is correctly identifying it's a singular plural mistake. So my students are huge fans is what it should be. Everything there should be plural. We don't want singular ideas mixed in. Perfect. Let's move on to that second example below. It would simply be amazing if you can come. This is a verb tense mistake. Do you see it? Which word would you fix here if this was your response? Should be a relatively easy fix once you notice the mistake. Yeah, the word can is incorrect. It should be could. It would simply be amazing if you could come. So would and could go together as they both indicate that past tense modal, the verb tense. That third one might be a little trickier. It's just a bit of a wordiness issue. Rather than say inspire the students on how to create a fantasy world, we would better say inspire the students to create a fantasy world. So we can just take out a couple of those words there to be a little bit more concise and to the point. It would just clarify the meaning a little bit, but that one is really, really minor. The other 2 I'd say would be a little bit more problematic. So we've identified 3 little grammar mistakes. The next question is, do any of these mistakes make it difficult to understand the meaning? Would you say yes or no? Is it difficult, really hard now to understand the ideas because of these mistakes? Oh, and I'm so happy to see everyone saying, no, it's not really a problem. 100% correct. And this is important for scoring. So even though we might make the odd mistake like Jennifer has done here, there are only 3 grammar mistakes and none of them are major. None of them affect our ability to understand. So they're going to have a very minimum effect on the score, if any. So please, again, don't stress yourselves out looking for perfection. Sometimes even level 12 responses have little tiny grammar mistakes. The point is you want to demonstrate as many major strengths as you can. And we could also look at the spelling and punctuation. I noticed 3 mistakes as well, and I've circled them for you. That first one is obvious, I think. It's a question. What's going to happen now? Question mark. That's correct. We just want to take out the period. We don't need 2 punctuation marks there. That second example, it's a spelling thing, but it creates the wrong word. It says to create a fantasy world of their own is what it should be. Spell check would not catch that because the word word is a real English word. And then last but not least, in that final line, we have a comma at the end of that sentence. And we all know that we should be putting a full stop, a period there. So again, little tiny mistakes we notice. Luckily for Jennifer, none of them really affect our ability to understand. So not much to stress about, yeah. There's a tiny little capital mistake too on the sign off there. Kind regards, we've gone through this already. So we want to put a smaller case R on the word regards rather than a capital. So again, little tiny mistake wouldn't affect the score, but if we notice it, we can certainly fix it. Absolutely, good. All right. Let's give her a report card, shall we? So task fulfillment is the final category on that rater's checklist. And I've got the guiding question for you on the right-hand side. How well did you follow the instructions? Did you use an appropriate tone? That's what the raters are checking for. So if you look at those 4 bulleted points below, these are the main tasks we've been addressing all the way through today's session so far. Definitely the introduction to the school, we can give her full points. We'll mark it with a green happy face. Again, look back to that top paragraph. Killarney Elementary, we're situated near the rec center, close to Rupert and 45th. She teaches, oh, she doesn't give us the info, darn it. Oh, she missed this. We don't know what grade she's teaching, right? So again, sort of marks for or recognition for the grand intro to the school, but unfortunately we've missed that little detail about the grade. That whole second paragraph talking about how Misty and the lonely Harold, the lonely dragon, are interacting, and it creates this fantasy world, etc. It's a really nice description, gives us lots of information as to why the students would like the book, called Unicorn Land, I guess, so we can give her full marks for that. The invitation to the classroom is the 3rd paragraph down, and Jennifer has just said in the next 2 weeks. So at least we have an invitation, but remember how we talked about this at the beginning of today's session. It's probably best to give her a precise range. So we might just say in the next 2 weeks, you know, sometime in the morning between 9 and noon. You could even say March 24th to April 7th. Would you be free? You know, a little bit more precision there would probably make that stronger. And again, the activity she chooses to suggest to Ms. Miller makes sense. Explain to the students how to create this fantasy world, sure, and have them create their own. That's great. But remember, she repeats that idea so often rather than develop it further. So if you look at the completion of this task, she's addressed most of the tasks. She's only forgotten the detail of the grade of the class. Okay, so 1 minor omission. 2 of these elements were done incredibly well, and the other 2 were definitely adequate, but with room for development for sure. Okay, so that's that. And last but not least, we want to look at the tone. I would say that she's very respectful and friendly, except we talked about this already too. It should be dear Ms. Miller, yeah. Now, Marcelo is really concerned about the use of the name in the opening. My name is Jennifer Clark. No, not necessary. Don't do that. I mean, your name is at the bottom anyways, right? So why not just start with, I'm an English teacher, or I teach grade 4 at Killarney Elementary, blah, 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 blah. At the very bottom, we get your name. Yeah. You'll save yourself some word count as well. So that would give you back about 5 words that you could add in. Jennifer's already at 196 words, right? So she could definitely take a few more words and add in a few descriptive words instead. Yeah, so not necessary. It's not going to affect the score if you're concerned about it. But I think just in the real world, as well as CELPIP here, I don't think it's necessary, no, right? Alina, don't do that either. Hope this email finds you well, no. I know it's respectful and I know it's polite, but the whole purpose of writing an email is to get right to the point. People's time is really precious. So we are respectful here, but Ms. Miller just wants to know exactly what you want of her first off. So if we start with, I'm an English teacher, I teach this, and so on. I think, Alina, if you were writing to a close friend or colleague, that might be more suitable. Oh, hope you're doing well today. It's a lot more casual, wouldn't you say? So yeah, for this email, I don't think that's appropriate at all. Just tell Ms. Miller what it is you want, be respectful about it, and then sign off. Like, thank you for your time at the end is much more formal than what you've suggested there. And I think it fulfills the purpose for sure. All right, let's finish off with task 1 and we'll get get into the second task. So once again, I'm going to relaunch the same poll here that you've seen before, and I'd like you to give this one a score. What do you think? We've seen level 7 and we've seen level 12. So that maybe helps you bookend the scores. And if you compare Jennifer's work to the others, it might give you some more ideas as to where she fits in. All right, all right. I'll give you about 10 more seconds to make your guess. Let's finish off here. So here's what you said. I've got 50% of you on the nose, suggesting this is a level 9. And then the next biggest cohort would be 37% of you, suggesting it's a level 10. So that's interesting. One of you is correct. I'll let you know right now which one is correct. Those of you that voted for level 9 have it. This is a level 9 response. So this is sort of that coveted score that anybody applying for permanent residency status is aiming for as a minimum, I'm guessing, based on your points for immigration. So by level 9, this is considered intermediate. This is what we call effective communication. By the level 9, we're able to show fairly consistent control of complex grammar. It would be unusual at this stage in the game to see the types of mistakes we saw, say, from Lucas at level 7, with syntax and grammar errors that confused us. We don't get that type of seriousness if we do have any grammatical errors, so more complexity. The vocabulary is starting as well to be more consistently precise. Yes, there will be some common language too, but we're starting to see evidence of more thoughtful word choices that are really enhancing the meaning. The text will be a little bit longer. As you could see, she was almost at 200 words on the nose, about 197 to be precise. So that's typical at the intermediate level. And again, there are some occasional errors. We found 6, but none of these mistakes were major and none of them affected our ability to understand the rest of the meaning. So that is typical of what a level 9 writer can achieve. So as far as email structure goes, let's just recap this. We need a greeting. Chances are on the CELPIP test, it's likely going to be a more formal situation. So if it's formal, like this one, you would be saying, "Dear Ms. Smith." If you're writing to a friend or a colleague you knew well, you could be casual and say, "Hi, John." Completely up to you. You have to decide how formal the situation calls for. The purpose statement is why you're writing. And in this example, we were writing to invite this author to our classroom. Usually we put the purpose statement in that first paragraph. That's most helpful for the reader to understand right away what it is you're writing about. The middle paragraphs, we call the body paragraphs, and this is where you complete those writing tasks, those bulleted points. So the number of paragraphs you write really depends on how many main ideas you have. Never submit your work in one gigantic paragraph. You don't want just one block of information. We should definitely see multiple paragraphs because, again, it makes it easy for the reader to understand where ideas begin and end, and then the next main idea is beginning. We should have a concluding statement, and we saw great evidence of this. Just looking forward to seeing you, or hope you can visit, or thank you for your time. Something really short and simple like that at the end before the sign off works wonderfully. So we practiced a lot of this formal structure today. So there's an example of a 2-word sign off, "Kind regards." Please note the capital letters and your end punctuation. A single word like "sincerely," that's another very common one. If it's a casual email, it's okay to be casual and use "cheers" and then sign your name. But again, for CELPIP, I think more times than not, you'll likely have a more formal situation. And last but not least, you need a name. And that part's the easiest. Either use your real name or just make one up, but have a name so that you can fulfill the writing structure for an email for sure. Okay. Yesha, you need to put a space between the sign off and your name. That's all. Jennifer Clark didn't do that. It's such a minor thing. I didn't even point it out to you, but yeah, it goes sign off, empty space, signature. Yeah, that's the correct way to go. Good question. All right. Let's move on to task 2. And we've only got 2 responses to look at here. So we'll do this part a little bit more quickly. Task 2, remember, asks you to respond to survey questions, or a survey question, I should say. So here is your question. Can you take about 15 seconds to skim read it over? And then we'll do a true or false activity. The good old vacation question. All right, let's do a quick true or false, and then we'll dive into some ideas here. You should include details about the hotel and the training. So in other words, would it be wise in your response at some point to name the hotel and describe the type of training you're doing? Are those good ideas? Would you think? Should you be doing this? I guess if you want a level 9. What do you think? Based on everything we've talked about so far today, I am so happy to see that everybody got this right. Yeah. Yeah, we should be doing this at all times. I think it's just you're training the mind. Don't be general in the writing. Try to give as many specific details as you can. It'll always help your content and your vocab, I think. What about this one? You can support your choice. So let's pretend you selected option A, which is to keep your vacation time and not go to the hotel training. If that was your choice, can you give a couple of reasons why you don't want to go to the hotel? And then give a weakness with the other option and say, if I go to the hotel, this is why that wouldn't work. Could you do this and still be effective here as a persuasive piece of writing? And once again, I'm really pleased to see that everybody unanimously in Zoom has this right. This is true. You've got a little bit of choice here, which I like for this writing task too. You have the option. Again, if option A is your choice, you could just give 3 solid reasons why you're not interested in the hotel training. And that would be fine. You could still score quite well. But again, if you wanted to mix and match a bit, give 2 strengths for option A and a weakness with option B, if that's your choice. I think having 3 reasons is probably the perfect number for a 200-word response in 26 minutes. But yeah, again, you decide how you want to do it. And it might depend a little bit on how quickly you can think of ideas, right? If you can't think of weaknesses with the other choice, then just don't choose that method. Just focus on your own. But do know this is certainly a possibility for sure. All right, let's have a quick look at option A. So if you're not interested in going to the hotel, for the training, I mean, if you just want to keep your regularly scheduled vacation, what would be one solid reason to suggest that that would be the best choice? Think about this from a real world standpoint. If your boss came to you today and said, hey, guess what? You're going to give up 2 days of vacation so we can go do some training at this hotel. And you have to find a polite way to say to them, no, thank you, right? You're going against your boss's wishes. So you have to give some very, very logical support. Okay, and the obvious answers I like coming in. Family time, for sure. I would talk all about family time, a work-life balance. Maybe your vacation has already been booked. Alina points out it's spring break. We've already booked our vacation and we would lose the money for the bookings if we canceled it now. You could talk about that. So all of that would be wonderful. Okay, and again, Prab, I think your idea is again about work-life balance. We need a solid disconnect from work so that we can be refreshed coming home, etc. Okay, good. Can we switch gears for a moment and pretend we're selecting the other choice, option B? Remember, on the CELPIP test, you can only choose one. So you're either supporting A or B. Don't support them both. But we've just given some examples for option A. Can we also now give some examples for B in case some of you would rather choose that option? So this is where you're saying, sure, we'll go back, we'll go down to the hotel for some training and we'll give up those 2 vacation days. What would be a really solid benefit of doing it that way? Let's see what you have to say. Okay, I'm not surprised to see the 2 main ideas that I think are the most obvious. Yeah, team building for sure. You're going to be down at the hotel with your colleagues. So even though you're working, you're still having opportunities to build those professional relationships. Wonderful. And another great idea coming in right now is all about your own professional growth. So having this opportunity is going to benefit or improve your own work skills. So when you return to the office, you're going to be better prepared, I suppose. Yeah, good. Those are the 2 main ideas. If you can think of a third, wonderful, but have at least 2. I always try to have 3. Anyway, to that end, here is the first of 2 responses we're going to look at. Notice that this is not an email. For writing task 2, you can choose to either write an email or write it this way. This is, I don't even know what I would call this. It's almost like memo format. But at the very top, we've got, hi, John. That would be the boss. And the moment I read that, I assume that whoever is writing this knows their boss really well and has that friendly relationship with them because it's such a casual opening. So I think it works. You can still, I mean, this is how I talk with my own managers at work. I know them well enough. So it's possible to be casual. If you do not have that casual relationship, if it's more formal, you might still choose to say, "Dear Mr. Smith," and you can do that too. I think either approach for this particular response would work. But this person has chosen the casual response. "Hi, John. Can you continue to read?" I'll give you about 20 seconds for this one. That first sentence should identify the options selected, and then we should have reasons expressed throughout paragraphs 2 and 3. So take a moment there to read it through, and we'll have a quick talk about it. Okay. I see lots of really excellent skill development, but a few things that I would definitely work on. So let's get right to that. First and foremost, that top sentence should give us the position. And this person has clearly identified that they would like to go for training. So when they say, "I second your suggestion to reduce the number," there are some grammar mistakes there, aren't there? It should be the number of vacation days. So there's a couple of minor little grammar writing errors there. But we're supporting the boss's decision to, again, reduce our vacation and go for training instead. So now that we understand that's the position, we need to have evidence. We need to have reasons supporting why that would be the best choice. Notice that the reasons that really directly address the topic do come, but they don't come till the final paragraph. And I think these are the same ones that all of you were thinking of just earlier, where we're talking about team building. This writer has said we don't have enough company events. So this hotel training would provide an excellent opportunity for employees to get to know each other better. So that's one solid reason. I can see how that would be a logical connection. And the other one is also what some of you have thought of today, which is improving our skills. So this is all about professional development. So we've got two solid reasons there. I don't see a ton of content development or detail given there either. So we actually don't know like what is the hotel they're going to? What is the type of training they're doing? Which skills in particular are we going to be benefiting from? So are we really working on our conflict management or conflict resolution skills? Is this an HR conference and we're going to work on communication so we can better serve our clients back in the office? So thinking precisely of these details would definitely enhance the content there. But at least if you're looking at task fulfillment, we can give credit for choosing an option, giving some reasons why it would be of support. Note that that whole second paragraph, I guess it's the first middle paragraph there, it's really well written from a grammar and writing standpoint, and there are many examples of very strong vocabulary words. The content, though, I would say would be the weakest part of this person's response, because you might notice that even though that first paragraph does indeed focus on vacation time, which is sort of what the question is asking us to consider, this first paragraph actually focuses more on how much vacation the employees in the company receive, rather than on the specific CELPIP question of giving up 2 days of vacation to go to the training. So I'm so happy for this test taker that they finally, in that last paragraph, came right back to the question and cited a couple of reasons to show how the training would be beneficial. But that first paragraph, if this were my answer, I'd love to get back in there and really add in some extra details that would focus more on the task at hand rather than discussing vacation in general. So I would say content, again, would be a little bit of a weakness for sure. But again, task fulfillment, we've picked an option, we've supported it with logical reasons, we've followed the word count, 170 words. So this writer had an additional 30 words they could have written. That would have been just enough to tidy up that first paragraph, in my opinion, to really connect it back to how training would be helpful. Food for thought, as we say. But apart from that, apart from the content weaknesses, check out the vocabulary. Friends outside work, team lead, overall decrease, lamenting, beneficial. So no problems with vocab there. I would also like to point out, as far as the readability goes, that of all of the responses you've seen today, even including Mrs. Appleby's level 12, In my humble opinion, I think that this person demonstrates the best sentence structure that you've seen so far today. And the reason I mention that, and I'll use this second sentence here as my example, every single sentence here is a complex sentence. So this one, as an example, begins here and finishes down here. What this writer can do so beautifully is show a variety of structures. So this whole phrase, we're starting with what's called a conjunction. We're setting up a subordinate clause. We're connecting this idea down to the main idea of the whole sentence. And then the next complex structure that we begin, we're starting it with a different connection way. This is a conjunction. This is a subordinate clause. Over here, we're starting this sentence with an adverb and so on. So this writer certainly knows a thing or two about complex sentence structures and is indeed showing all of that variety that was missing perhaps in some of the other responses. Okay, so again, this is maybe a bit tougher to analyze because we've done some things incredibly well. Like the writing skills, apart from the few mistakes in that first sentence, are really strong. The vocab's great, sentence structure is wonderful. Sure, we answered the question, but I think the content details are a little bit weak here. So I'm curious to see what you're going to say about this one. I've just relaunched the poll in Zoom here. Let's see what you think. I guess, what score do you feel he probably earned? Based on what we now know about scoring, we have to look at all four categories. So it becomes a balancing act, right? Like, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Of the weaknesses we've talked about, are there any major weaknesses that make it hard for us to understand? So this is the approach that I hope we continue to take here. You've got about 5 more seconds to make your vote count here in the online poll, and I will share your results. So I'm actually not overly surprised. Here are your results. And again, it's a really mixed bag. You're fairly evenly split between levels 7, 9, and 10. And right now, the majority of you think this is a level 9 with 45%. So I guess the next thing for me to do would be to show you which level this person earned. You might be a little bit surprised, but when you really think about it, it makes sense. This person did earn a level 10. So remember back to Jennifer Clark's answer. She got the level 9. Her content detail, I think, was better, more interesting, more developed than this person's level 10. But all of the other skills in this sample were definitely higher level, definitely more precise, fewer grammatical errors, much more consistent complexity with the sentence structure, etc. And that's exactly what level 10 does. So think of level 9 as being intermediate. Think of level 10 as being upper level intermediate or high intermediate. There's sort of a minute difference between them. So by level 10, all the grammar, again, apart from his first sentence, whoever wrote that, there were some minor mistakes there. But apart from that, we had very good control over the complex grammar and the sentence structures in particular. The vocabulary was quite precise, formal where it needed to be as well. The errors were few and far between. I think I saw 2 of them in that first sentence, and they were so minor that they didn't really matter. So we have stepped it up a little bit from the level 9, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's a level 10. Okay, here's our final response for the entire day or session. We have now seen level 7, 9, 10, and 12. So this particular response is going to be a repeat of one of those 4 skills or score categories. So I want you to bear that in mind as you're looking through it. Can you take just about 20 seconds to do a skim read? And then we'll quickly talk about Larry's email and finish off for the day. Okay, I'm going to do something completely different and ask you in the Zoom chat right now. Can you quickly guess what score you think this earned? We won't launch a formal poll, but just instinct now. You've seen examples of all 4 levels, 7, 9, 10, and 12. Where does this one fit in according to what you've learned about the scoring? Okay. Ooh, we're all over the map. Okay. I'm glad I asked. So all I can see there is people are selecting levels 9, 10, and 12. Nobody has selected level 7, and that's good. This is not level 7. So that part you got right. But you're really, really split now between 9, 10, and 12. So I tell you what, let's do another deep dive into this response. We will analyze all 4 of those areas again, and then I'm hoping it'll be more clear as to which of these levels this is. So again, over on the right-hand side of this chart, I've got in gold the particular guiding questions that the raters ask. So starting with the content and coherence, they want to see how well your ideas are organized and developed. And again, when you look at Larry's email, and by the way, this is an email structure. For writing task 2, you can choose to write an email if you'd like. And one of you was asking me about that earlier. So if you're choosing to write an email, you have to follow the email structure, like Dear Mr. Smith, and the rest of it works. So in that very first sentence, we would expect, and luckily Larry does indeed, identify which position he's supporting. His wording is not overly clear though. We know from the test instructions that he wants to keep the vacation and not go to the hotel. But I think the wording here is a little tricky and maybe not clearly expressed like it could be. So he says, well, I really appreciate your offer. Even that part doesn't quite make sense. Your offer to be trained at a hotel, I would say. I would like to keep my vacation as it is for the following 3 reasons. So I think we could tidy up the language there, but at the very least, we have a basic understanding of which position Larry is supporting. What helps here as far as our content and coherence, and remember that your coherence is all about how organized and how much the ideas flow. What Larry has done quite well is that for every single reason he delivers, and there are 3 of them, he has correctly started a new paragraph. And more to that, he's given us transitional words like firstly, secondly, and finally. And when we see those, we know that the next main idea is coming. So well done, Larry. I'm glad he's got these transitions. But the weakness I point out with this is that it's a little bit formulaic. If we're only going to rely on these types of transitions, I call them sequential transitions because you're ordering. So first, second, third, finally, they're effective, but they're a little bit simple and basic. If you think back to the level 10 example that I just showed you, that person didn't even use any of these transitions, and yet we always knew when the next idea was coming because they were able to structure their sentences with such complexity. So that level 10, that showed actually better or higher level sentence construction with those ideas the way they fit. So bear that in mind. I'm not saying don't use these, but what I am suggesting is learn other ways too to start a new idea. Don't always rely on the basics first, second, third, because again, it is formulaic. It's a little bit simple. So I just want you to be aware of that. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on and actually look at the content details. So in that first paragraph, the first reason why Larry wants to keep his vacation, and this is clever if you ask me, he says that training will not only benefit me, but also the company. And so he says it's an extension of work and shouldn't be counted as vacation. And I would agree with that. In other words, if we're going to be trained at the hotel, then that's work. Like, don't ask us to give up our vacation time. So that's one reason why he's not even interested in going to the hotel. He doesn't want to give up those precious vacation days. So that makes sense. It's a very logically argued comment, I guess, or a reason. His second paragraph gives a new idea. And this is one that you all thought of as well. He's got a family, specifically a wife and children. So of course he wants to spend time with them on his vacation, and he doesn't want to give up days with them. His final or third and final reason, this is where he now gives a weakness with the hotel. And he says, if we did go to the hotel, we'd have distractions. That's the main idea. And the distractions that he cites would be crowds and heat. So I think these points are quite well developed. Each time he gives us that main idea, he does give us a few examples to support what he's talking about. So the content and the coherence here is quite strong. All right, I've got a new question at the bottom there. It says, are all of these supporting details precise? So the ones I've just shown you are quite precise, but Larry also includes details that aren't as clear, like this. The vacation time is when I spend the days building relationships, or my family will not like to see me less, right? So just contrast the vagueness of these expressed ideas with the more precise ones you've just seen. So again, I'm hoping some of you are getting a better sense of the scoring here. We definitely have lots of strengths, yes, but there are other things too that are cropping up that we would want to work on a little bit more. So bear that in mind. Okay, we do definitely see some examples of precise vocabulary, but I would argue there are also examples of imprecise words. And for time's sake, if you don't mind, I'll quickly again color code the screen. Again, in blue, you see words that are put together accurately, they make sense, longer expressions, so that's nice to see. But in orange, we don't get a lot of repetition. I think if anything, Larry has overused the word vacation. There are other ways we could express vacation, like holiday, time away from work, booked time off. You could play with those words a little bit. But I think more than that, it's just a little bit of awkwardness in the phrasing. Like on the job training, we know what he means, it's just not 100% accurate, and so on. So again, more examples of precision, I would argue, than not, but we certainly have some examples of imprecise vocabulary. So think back again to those 4 levels you've seen already and try to gauge how Larry's doing. As far as readability goes, once again, we've already said his organization's quite well done because he's paragraphed appropriately and used a lot of those transitions as well. We do have some grammar mistakes, as I pointed out, but nothing too major that's going to affect our ability to understand the idea. So this is a good thing for sure. And I would say that his tone is this is task fulfillment. Yeah, he's picked a position. He has supported it with 3 reasons. His tone seems quite polite. And I'd like to quickly point out to you a persuasive technique that you can use in your own writing. And I would encourage you to learn this structure. So these 2 sentences I've just underlined for you. First of all, they are examples of complex sentence structures. This is a good thing. This is going to help support the readability score for sure. But under task fulfillment, when you look at the tone, one way to win an argument, which is sort of what you're doing here, Larry's trying to persuade the boss to go along with his own idea. Larry is selecting an opposite idea from what the boss would like him to do. So what Larry does in that very first sentence is, before he comes right out with his own idea of not wanting to go to the hotel, Larry takes a moment to address the boss's opinion. He says, well, I really appreciate your offer to go to the hotel for training, he means. I would like to keep my vacation the way it is for the following 3 reasons. So when you acknowledge the other person's opinion first, and then present your own opinion, which is different, you're softening the opportunity for hurt feelings. You are demonstrating respect for the other person's position first. This is a really excellent exercise in tone. And he does the exact same thing in that 3rd paragraph down. Again, he says, well, being at the beachside hotel is very inviting. So he acknowledges the boss's idea first. He then comes back to his own idea. I prefer learning in a more conducive environment. Really nice word choice there too. So again, I point this out as something that you can consider practicing at home and using, not just in CELPIP, quite honestly, if you're ever in a position where you're persuading somebody to agree with you, this is a really solid technique to use because it minimizes the opportunity for disrespect or for hurt feelings when people disagree with each other. So just consider it is all. Anyway, we've talked about all 4 of those skills. So I guess now is the better opportunity. Can we do one more Zoom poll? So I've just launched the Zoom poll online. So this is your last opportunity to vote. A lot of you earlier were torn between levels 9, 10, and 12. So I'm hoping our deep dive into the 4 categories of the checklist is giving you a little bit more focus now. You might want to revise your assessment from before. Let's see what you have to think. And yes, I can see some revisions being made, and this is a good thing. I'm really glad then that we had that thorough discussion first. All right, you've got 5 more seconds, by the way, to log your vote, and then I'll reveal the score here. Looks like about it. Okay. So I think when we did the informal Zoom chat, more of you anyway, were leaning towards level 12. And now I can see that some of you have changed your answers and are suggesting level 10. And you've also got several on the board for level 9. So there is no way this is a level 12. Level 12 was Mrs. Appleby. And think about how sophisticated her writing was, right? Level 12, things like, perhaps you have seen the bright pink mural in the neighborhood. It gets quite the attention from people passing by. And then you look at this one where we're talking about, I have a wife and children and they would not like to see me less, right? Just for comparison, there's no way this is a level 12. This is definitely intermediate. So the question is it level 9? Is it level 10? And I'm going to reveal that for you. it is a level 9. So this is another example of level 9. So Jennifer Clark had one example of level 9 today, and then Larry has the other example. And just to remind you what level 9 is all about, this is where we're having good control now of complex grammar. We're starting to develop more precise vocab. It's not going to be perfect, as we could see from Larry, but he had some wonderful word choices like conducive and distractions and so on. There will certainly be some minor mistakes, but none of the grammar and writing errors will affect our ability to understand. Typically at level 9, we've ironed out the major errors, and any little ones that we saw here in both Jennifer Clark and Larry's examples are minor, as I say, not important. They don't affect the ability to understand, right? All right, so that's the end of that. I'm going to quickly run down some of our free prep materials and finish off with an introduction to the bookstore. So if you've got any last minute questions about CELPIP, this is a great opportunity to put your questions in the Zoom chat and I'll answer them before we log out. So I think a lot of you are taking CELPIP for your postgraduate work permit applications, and that's great. A reminder that yes, CELPIP is certainly a test you can take and use to apply for this program. We do have other free webinars that you can attend if you haven't already. So we deliver most of these webinars once each month. I would encourage you to check out the homepage, celpip.ca, and then just type in /webinars. And it's going to take you to our schedule for the rest of the webinars. And you can, again, sign up for anything you'd like to attend. Yeah, they are free, by the way, but you simply would need to sign up so we can give you the Zoom link. And that's exactly how you attended today. So that would be helpful. We've got a YouTube channel, and the name of the channel is CELPIP Official, spelled like this. There are many different study series and playlists there. So please take a browse when you have a moment. Everything here is free. So this is where we keep one copy of a recording of all of the free webinars. So if you can't attend live, you can at least go there and watch the 2-hour recordings at your leisure. We have study tip series. We present also a CELPIP live program on YouTube. We go live twice a month. And anything we present live is also recorded and put up on the YouTube channel as well. So just check the playlist there, and I'm sure you're going to find something that is helpful. As I say, they're all free anyway, so take a look around. For speaking and writing both, if you wanted more examples of different scores, I would encourage you to go to the homepage again, celpip.ca. Up at the top, you can see those menu options, and you'll want to select the Prepare for CELPIP option. And you're going to see this, the CELPIP score comparison chart. That'll be one of those options in the drop-down menu. So you get to click on whatever level you are studying, whatever your goal is. So let's say it's level 9. When you click there, you can actually read 2 different writing responses from 2 different CELPIP test takers. You'll get to see the question first and then read the responses. And you can also get the write-up from the raters about the strengths and weaknesses across those same 4 areas of the checklist that we discussed today. There are also speaking responses here. So same idea, you get to see the question and then hear the recordings of 2 different test takers' answers and so on. So a nice way to get familiar with the different scoring for sure. We do have 2 free practice tests available right on the website too at celpip.ca. So there are currently the 2 free ones are there. We have a bookstore as well if you wanted to purchase additional tests. So there are 13 sets of practice tests, and each set contains 2 tests. So quite honestly, there are 26 tests right now available for purchase, and you can buy the sets individually or you can bundle them together to save money in the long run overall. And again, I won't get into detail about the products, but if you were interested in browsing, you could visit the bookstore. The link here is at the bottom. You'd have to type that into the browser, and you can have a look to see the study guides. There's an Accelerate program. It's an online course. There are textbook series like the Focus, the Vocabulary Skills book, etc. So take a peek. We do sometimes have sales as well. So if you are not in a huge rush, you might want to wait until the next sale is up, and all the prices here would be half price usually, is how the sales go. Okay, and I'm going to leave you with this here just before I return back to the Zoom chat to answer some questions there. We do have our email customer service at the top. So info@celpip.ca. If you have questions, especially about things like test registration and so on, that would be a great place to address those. Again, reminders of the CELPIP website and bookstore website. These 4 social media channels do contain free, I was gonna say products. Basically anything we've ever presented live at some point would be recorded and housed usually on YouTube. On our Instagram channel too, we like to put out posts sometimes even just simple little grammar tips and writing tips, etc. So if you subscribe to the channel, you'll always have access, I guess, to know when the sales are coming and when our next live presentations are. Note that for YouTube, we still go live every second Thursday at 9:30 in the morning. That would be Vancouver time, Pacific time. And on Instagram, we try to pop on once a month on a Monday at 9 in the morning. And that would be a very casual ask me anything type episode. So if you've got simple little questions, we'll be there to take them for you. Okay, I'm going to quickly, I might not have time to answer all of these, but I'm just going to have a quick look back at my Zoom chat box to see what questions I can ask for you. The free tests do not provide individualized feedback on speaking or writing. No, we don't have the service for that, Marcelo. We do, of course, give you that performance standard chart. So you'll have to look at that to become a little bit more familiar, I guess, with your own scoring. We do have prep providers, by the way. So right on the website, if you wanted to actually take an English class and work with somebody who is trained to teach CELPIP courses, or just some people do hire tutors or just get together little study groups, and they can work with people that are highly proficient in English as well. So all of these things would help. But yeah, we don't offer the one-to-one feedback for speaking or writing, not even for the free tests. You do have answer keys for listening and reading though. So I guess that's a help. There's another question about scoring, and this is a good one too. I think someone else asked this earlier. So with the 2 writing tasks, right, you've only got the 2 of them, you're going to get a score on each task. And you might not get the same score. Like if the email question is easier for you, let's pretend you got like a 9 there, and then on the task 2, maybe you got an 8 or something to that effect. So whatever your scores are on the 2 tasks, they're averaged together and rounded to the nearest CELPIP level. That's all that happens there. It's an average of the 2 scores individually. So it's the average score that is on your score report for writing. Yeah. And it's very common, as I say, for people to do a little bit better in one task versus the other. So don't feel like you've done something wrong if that's the case. I think we all have different strengths or weaknesses. But yeah, it is an average of the 2. It would be highly unlikely for someone to get, a level 9 in one and a level 4 in another. I can't see why that would happen because you're using the same writing skills to address both tasks. But sometimes it boils down to the content and the focus and the way it's organized. But yeah, ballpark, that's what's happening with the score. That was a really great question. And Alina says, we're all going to get level 12 now. I like your confidence. I think that's really wonderful. Okay, I think we've answered most of the questions here. Yeah, we've addressed all of these. Perfect. Okay. And again, we've already talked about how, yes, all the questions are on screen when you're typing. My goodness, how could you answer a question when you can't even see it? So yeah, please don't stress. And if you have other questions about what the screens will look like when you take the test, that's why we've got the 2 free practice tests online. So you can see exactly what it's going to look like, and there will be no surprises come test day. Yeah, good. Okay. All right. Oh, I missed this question, Anna. Thanks for putting it back in about contractions. I meant to address that earlier, and I just plain forgot. So contractions, everyone, is a short form with an apostrophe. So rather than say he is, you might type in he's, He''s. In a formal email or a formal piece of writing, it is acceptable to use contractions now and then. My best advice would be not to overuse them, because if you use too many contractions, you're creating a very casual tone. Does that make sense? So for the most part in formal writing, you'll be writing the full form without those contractions or short forms. But again, if you just use a couple of contractions now and then, it's fine. So that's a great question to ask from a grammar standpoint. Yes. Okay. And Yesha has the last question of the day, and then we'll log off as we're a little bit over time here. The last question is all about, do we include the last name in a signature for casual writing? Casual writing, no. If you're writing a casual email, it's because you know the person quite well. They know who you are, sign off with your first name, and you're fine. In a formal situation, though, it is customary to use your first and last name. That person doesn't yet know you so well, so we put the first and last name there. Yep. And again, if you make a little mistake like that on your actual test, it's not going to affect your score. It's such a minor thing. But again, I think learning these skills now and applying them to the real world outside the CELPIP test is also helpful. So I do appreciate the question, and I think that it's a good one to think about. Excellent. Okay. Nice. All right, I'm going to log off. Some of the questions coming in now we've already talked about in session. So I'll just refer you back to the recording if you don't mind. You are going to receive a recording. I will email you the link, remember? So if you've missed parts of the session or want to review, you can always watch the parts you need to catch up on. But thanks so much for attending. And I think you all had some fantastic ideas to offer in the Zoom chat, which is always helpful. It makes the session more interesting, but it helps you learn better when you're actively participating in the lesson. So thanks so much. I'm going to log out now, and hopefully I will see you back for the next session. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.